Hey everybody, it's Dave here again from Dragonhill Games, and today I'm super excited to show you guys a deck I've been working on for a couple of weeks using Risen Reef from the new core set 2020. First off, I'd like to give a shout out to Trevor H and Dan W for helping me finalize the list. If you guys haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so now. We post at least 2 videos every week, awesome deck tech videos like this and box openings. So let's have a look at how this deck works.
We always recommend shopping at your local game store. However, if there's something you can't find locally, we have provided a link for every card you see in this video in the description. Using that link will help support this channel. Okay, let's get right into the nuts and bolts of the deck. Essentially, this is a combo deck that revolves around Risen Reef and Amulet of Vigor. Anytime Risen Reef or another elemental enters the battlefield, we put the top card of our library onto the battlefield if it is a land. Note that this is a May effect. You can choose to put the land into your hand if you want, although I can't imagine a scenario where you would actually do this. If it's not a land, it goes directly to hand. This combines with Amulet of Vigor to produce absurd amounts of mana, usually in one turn. So along with the Amulet, we play all of the bounce lands in the Teamer colors. These lands tap for 2 mana each and would normally enter the battlefield tapped, but thanks to our Amulet, we will be able to use them to continue generating mana whenever Risen Reef drops one onto the field for us. Keep in mind that if you have multiple Amulets in play, you can stack the Amulet triggers in such a way that you can tap the lands for mana in between each of the triggers resolving. In other words, if you have 2 Amulets, you will get 4 mana off of 1 bounce land, 3 Amulets will net you 6 mana, and so on. Risen Reef and Amulet of Vigor are essential parts of the deck. In the event that we don't start with them in our opening hand, these 2 cards will help us get our missing pieces. Flamekin Harbinger gives us the ability to tutor for an elemental whenever it comes into play. More often than not, we are going to be fetching up a Risen Reef, but if you are already set up, you can use it to grab a low-cost elemental like Spark Elemental or Healer of the Glade. That way we can keep comboing off. And Ancient Stirrings will help us find an Amulet or a bounce land if we are already set up. Phantasmal Image will usually come into play as another copy of Risen Reef, giving us even more triggers. But you can also use it to copy a storm entity and move in for the kill. Spark Elemental is a low-cost creature used to keep the combo going, and it's also a 3/1 with haste. And Hellspark Elemental also has haste and recursion in case our combo gets interrupted and we need to restart on a subsequent turn. Healer of the Glade is a perfect include in this deck. It only costs 1 green mana, which helps us keep triggering Risen Reef, and we get 3 life off the ETB effect, a nice way to stabilize against red deck if we can't finish our opponent in 1 turn. And finally, Storm Entity is just bonkers in this deck. Once you start going off, you will be casting as many as 15 to 20 elementals in 1 turn. Casting Storm Entity last will give us a creature with haste that enters the battlefield with as many +1/+1 counters on it as spells we have already cast this turn. This card alone can win the game for you. Rounding out our main board, let's have a look at some of our support spells. There will be times that you find yourself with a bunch of red and blue mana and little or no green mana in your mana pool, for example. Manamorphose gives us some color correction combined with a cantrip effect. Unsummon gives us the ability to rescue a Risen Reef or get a defender out of the way if we are going to swing in for the kill with a storm entity. And Mass Hysteria is an additional win con for the deck. You will have turns where you literally drop 10+ creatures into play. Giving them all haste should be enough to run over your opponent. Okay, let's have a look at our land package. The deck consists of 4 Simic Growth Chambers, 4 Izzet Boiler Works, and 3 Gruul Turfs. These are the lands that will be generating ridiculous amounts of mana when we drop them into play for free with our Risen Reefs, especially if we have multiple copies of Amulet of Vigor. Rounding out our land package, we also run 4 copies of Stomping Ground, 2 Steam Vents, 1 Breeding Pool, 1 Forest, and 3 Misty Rainforests. And finally, we'll have a look at our sideboard. There are 4 copies of Master of Waves. Initially, this card was in the main board, but after playtesting, I found it to be a little bit of overkill. However, it does make a nice side-in versus red deck, and the elementals he creates are just stupid crazy with Risen Reef. 4 copies of Naturalize, as we are worried about Chalice of the Void on 1. 4 copies of Pact of Negation go in if we are facing a control opponent or removal heavy deck, and 3 copies of Pulse of Marasa to side in versus red deck and other removal heavy opponents. And that's the deck, folks. A few things to keep in mind while playing it. Number 1, it is a combo deck, so you are best to play Risen Reef when you feel like you can win on that turn, to avoid a situation where it's going to get hit by removal. And number 2, when you go off, you are likely going to win on that turn, so hold off as long as you feel comfortable. The more mana you have available when you start the combo, the better. I hope you enjoyed having a look at my modern Risen Reef Amulet of Vigor combo deck. If you have any questions about how the deck operates, or if you can think of any improvements, please leave me a comment in the section below. Bye for now.